Hello, my name is Omar Abasad. It is 7:56 p.m., April 22nd, 2020. So I posted a picture of my leg that is constantly being burnt. Of course, by now you know that microwave technology is being used as part of the containment, the alert system that is being experimented with in Toronto by the cops. And certain people are selected. And in my case, as I said before, I was being trafficked from day one, as soon as we came to Canada. These traffickers look for vulnerable people, so they enroll them in this program where they are remotely trafficked. And the experimentation goes hand in hand with that. So the file that follows you around starts at that point. So there is a point where it's transferred hand to hand privately, and then at some point the decision is made to go public with it. So then you're turned out. So then the pyramid, you go down the pyramid, right? So you go to the very rich people, and then you keep going down to the very bottom, and the bottom in the pyramid system, not my system, the pyramid. The system that's being brought into place, the bottom of the pyramid is the Black people. So that's where I'm at right now. So because the Black people have it. Being passed around. So, okay, that was a very loud muffler going by there. A vehicle with very loud muffler, which happens a lot in this area. The trafficking and the experimentation goes hand in hand. The customization, the remote neural monitoring is part of the customization of the person to the master. That's part of the experiment. But I'm suspecting that the experiment that started years ago was a brain experiment. It was about teaching remotely, teaching subconsciously, programming while you sleep, because it was not always sexual. Because I recall having the same dreams about problem solving. Now, of course, I'm an accountant and I do figure, and I'm always into figures. This problem-solving dream that was recurring was about being in a maze and trying to figure out how to come out. And if you don't come out, you get terrorized. It was more like a problem-solving nightmare. But what is really weird, it wasn't about figures. It was about being terrorized in your dreams. And that was part of the experiment as well. And I also remember thinking in my dream when I woke up, remembering this, thinking in the dream that if I don't wake up, I will die. And there were various levels of your conscious and subconscious mind operating. And I could actually feel, and I was only like early 20s, I could actually feel the levels of consciousness pitching in, because I started meditating when I was really young. Meditating. I shouldn't say meditating at 6, but I started praying when I was really young. I was trained that way. So when I got older, I started meditating. So it got to the point through the meditation, I could pull myself out almost. It's hard to explain this. You can actually pull your consciousness out and be the onlooker as well as the person who's being looked at the same time. And years after, when I was listening to Deepak Chopra's lecture, then it kind of resonated with me, and I thought, oh, that's what I used to do. I was doing this in my early 20s. So anyway, when I was I just didn't know what I was doing. It just came naturally to me. So when I was dreaming, I knew I was dreaming while I was dreaming. And I also knew that it wasn't real, but the terror was real. The physiological effects on the body of the thought in the dream of not being able to wake up. And if I don't wake up, I'm going to die. The physiological effects on the body was very, very real, because I'd get up, my heart was pumping, and just like you had a nightmare, you'd be scared. Even though a little part of your mind is saying, well, it wasn't real, the physiological effect was still felt on a different level, a conscious level. Looking back now, I strongly suspect those were experiments being run remotely. And these weren't sexual dreams. They were different levels of experiments, I suspect. Knowing what's going on now, you know, you hear about drones and drones being able to take your temperature and your heart rate. Of course, if all of this is done, and it's all done openly now with COVID-19, to get to that point, you'd have to experiment. How do you know that it could be done? You'd have to run experiments. And some of these experiments are run covertly. Who do you choose? Vulnerable people, old people, young people, disabled people, mentally retarded people. Very easy, right? Nobody believes them when they talk. So I've had a situation in this building where the cops and people who are experimenting on me are insisting that I'm mentally ill. Obviously, I'm not mentally ill, or else I wouldn't be able to talk like this. But in retrospect, even though you know, the experience wasn't always pleasant, to say the least, given my nature, I always learn from my experience. I always go back and I think about what happened, and there's always a lesson to be extracted from it. So I learned from it. Things that I wasn't supposed to know while I was being experimented on because of my background. I knew. I just picked up on things that happened. A lot of it I picked up in retrospect when I became very, very, very aware. I was made aware. I was made aware a long time ago, but the technology became so obvious that it was very, very, very hard to deny. If I had any doubts that I was being experimented with, it was all gone. So awareness too has certain levels. So it's all kind of consolidating now, because the technology that's being used for COVID to surveil us under COVID-19 and the template that is being followed to collect data, and the people who are dying of the disease, the old people, all points to an experiment. All points to an experiment. Based on my personal experience of the experiments that's being run on me and the template that is used. I could see the exact template being played out under the COVID-19 cover. Let me reiterate, I am not anti-government. I am anti-corrupted government, corruption in the government. And there is a difference between corruption in the government, where people are spending money when they're not supposed to, and doing all sorts of fraud, and going to war when you're not supposed to. But this violation is about taking over a human being. It's like taking over the humanity. You're going to be surveilled with drones. You're going to be chipped. You're going to be tracked. The police are going to be at your door if a drone send a notification somewhere. This consolidation of surveillance and consolidation of power and consolidation of decision making, because the idea behind the World Health Organization, the UN, and so on, which I believe are infiltrated. I don't. It's not that I don't believe in the need and the use for a global organization that can cooperate with or bring together the world on certain issues and discuss it and so on. I'm not against that. However, we should be under no legal obligation to listen to what they say, and we should be countries. I mean, should have free will to organize their countries to manage their healthcare system, their population, education of the population, and so on. They should not be dictated to. In other words, there should not be uniformity to the extent of impinging on your on a human being's personal life, as we're seeing right now. Anyways, so let's go back to experimentation. As I said, these things I'm realizing in retrospect when I look back in my early 20s. Things that I read about and things that other targets are talking about, there is a pattern. This is not about mental illness. This is about a pattern that is followed when an experiment is being run. Because an experiment has to have a certain format. It has to follow certain steps in order to gather data that could be used in any useful fashion. So there are definite steps that you can observe, and in retrospect, I've observed those steps when I was younger. So this is not about mental illness. And one of the consistent cover is to say that the person is mentally ill and then dispose of the person. Unfortunately for the people who are experimenting on me, they did not count on, first of all, my genetics, my genetic makeup, and the inherent spiritual. I can't find another word. It goes even beyond spiritual. It's something that you inherit, that comes from your ancestors, you know, things that you know, it's just there. People in your lineage that you have absolutely no idea who they are, because I can't trace back mine. If I went to Trinidad, I wouldn't be able to track who my great-great-grandparents would be. Most likely they'd be in India, and I have no idea which part of India they came from. So I can't go back and track that lineage. But it came through genetic material, because I just knew certain things. So when I'm going to assume Caucasian groups, European groups in Canada chose me and my family as targets, they did not know about this information that's coming through genetically that they'd have to deal with, which is why I'm still alive and which is why I'm speaking out. Instead of being corrupted by what I went through, I'm empowered by it, simply because instead of succumbing to the experiments and all this, the nasty side effects health-wise, and all the mental and emotional harassment and the degradation or the attempted degradation and dehumanization. None of that was internalized. And the only reason I could think of for that not to have happened was it was something that I was born with. It was something that I inherited. It's in my genes. And the same is true for my family. My brother and my sister are exactly the same way. Degradation and dehumanization is not things that we internalize. Oh, it's almost as if we cannot internalize. And there are lots of other people out there who are like me. Not only Indians, there are other ethnic groups. There are enlightened people in every race, in every single race. There are enlightened people, even the ones that you think that doesn't exist. Even if you go to Africa and you go into the tribal areas, there is always an elder who seems to know things that that others may not know in his own tribe. And there's always something to learn from even the tribes that we think are backwards in Africa. There's always something to learn from them. So this thing about chipping and surveilling and micromanaging a human being, I'm completely, totally against it. Yes, that's where we're headed, but there is no necessity for it. We have great technology and we can use the technology, but there is no need to have a chip in our bodies and have ourselves tracked and vaccinated and tattooed. I heard a tattoo, which is really a chip, is going to be underneath your arm, invisible, underneath the skin, readable, machine readable. That's going to tell how many vaccines you've had so you can move around the world easily. There are other ways to deal with the situation. We have the technology to deal with the situation in a different way while preserving human rights and human dignity and humanity itself. So to that point, I posted a link. Actually, I posted a few. And so I don't have anti-glare on my glasses, so my glasses are probably going to reflect. Yeah, it is reflecting. Sorry about that. So, so this is just in a discovermagazine.com, because I was just doing more research, because I posted a link where the drones are being used in Pennsylvania as a test run to take people's temperature and their heart rate from 130 feet above them. So drones have the ability, I'm just going to read this, drones have the ability to do a lot of good, and recently they've been proving useful to rescuers in the United States by helping with hurricane recovery efforts. But what if they could do more than just document damage or survey areas? What if they could actually detect life? Researchers from the University of South Australia conducted a study published in Biomedical Engineering Online that shows drones can successfully measure heart and respiratory rates from the sky. Aerially detecting vital signs can be huge for recovering people after natural disasters, detecting security threats and monitoring infants and the elderly. Flyby drone dock, I guess that's a reference. 2 PhD students ran a series of tests, both indoors and outdoors, with 15 healthy people. The drone was about 10 feet in front of them at all times and captured video of individuals when stationary, moving, and in differing lighting conditions. Using image processing techniques and algorithms, the team was able to record vital signs from face and necks, even recording changes in human skin tone. Those vital signs were as accurate as current methods like electrocardiograms, pulse oximeters, and respiratory belts. Obviously, there are privacy and ethical issues around this technology that need to be resolved before it becomes common practice. But there is enormous potential to use machine vision systems to benefit society, particularly in the biomedical sphere. So let me read that again. Obviously, there are privacy and ethical issues around this technology that needs to be resolved before it becomes commonplace or common practice. But there is enormous potential to use machine vision systems to benefit society. So I posted the link to an article where it's being used in Pennsylvania. So let me just find that one. I posted quite a few. So bear with me for a second. So connect. Sorry. My screen is popping up all over the place. Yeah, there's a lot of advertisement on my screen here. And my Wi-Fi is, sometimes it just drops on me. Sorry. So in Connecticut, a police department said it plans to begin testing a pandemic drone that could detect whether a person 190 feet away has a fever or is coughing. But an expert on viruses and a privacy advocate question whether such technology can work, and if it does, whether it could help in controlling the spread of the coronavirus. The Westport Police Department and the town's top elected official, First Selectman Jim Marp, said the goal is to use the technology as part of a pilot program to flatten the curve of the pandemic. We know that social distancing is working to flatten the curve and ultimately saving lives, Marp said in a statement, in an effort to continue safeguarding the citizens of Westport during the COVID-19 outbreak. And as we position ourselves to gradually return to our routine, we should explore ways to prevent a possible resurgence of the virus. He praises the police department for exploring smart solutions that can keep residents safe. Westport, a wealthy community of about 29,000, an hour north of Manhattan, has 198 cases of coronavirus and 5 deaths. Just skipping ahead here. The town's police department said in a release that the drone could help to provide better health monitoring support for potential at-risk groups, and that it would not be used to monitor people in private yards and does not use facial recognition technology. Does not use facial recognition technology. Well, if you're chipped, they wouldn't need facial recognition technology. Police chief, and I'm going to skip that name, said one of the biggest obstacles in fighting the virus had been determining how far it has spread in the community, and a drone could help solve that problem. Using drones remain a go-to technology for reaching remote areas and has little to no manpower, with little or no manpower required. The police chief said in a statement, because of this technology, our officers will have the information and quality data they need to make the best decision in any given situation. The police spokesman said that during the testing phase of the program, no action will be taken if the drone shows that a person has a fever or is coughing. The focus for now is to evaluate information from the drone. So, the focus for now is just to evaluate information. Nothing is going to be done. You wouldn't find somebody knocking at your door as a result, hopefully. So what was it the other article said? Let me repeat that. And my chest is being scanned. Because I keep burping. See the word there? It's a scan. So this is my point exactly. This is abuse of power here and abuse of technology. So what does it say? Obviously, there are privacy and ethical issues around this technology that need to be resolved before it becomes common practice. But there is enormous potential to use machine vision systems to benefit society. Well, I agree with that, but can you explain this? Because one day the drones are going to be weaponized. And somebody is going to send alerts to the computer system that the drone is hooked up to. And somebody's going to press a button, or the drone might make that decision, or a computer that is attached to the drone will make that decision. And it's going to send a microwave beam at you. What is being done in this building is sending microwave beams into my eyes, into my genitals. So to stimulate my genitals in order to train me to be a sex slave, which is part of the trafficking. That's the trafficking ring that's being operated in the building is using this technology, misusing the technology. Corrupted cops are misusing the technology. As I just read, the cops are running a trial with drones that could log into unsuspecting people. It's in the newspaper, so I'm imagining they disclosed it. But did not ask the people's permission to log into them, because what you're doing really is taking their vitals. How do you take vitals? How do you get a heartbeat out of the person? Well, you have to log into them, like I'm being logged into right now. I'm being logged into with microwave technology. And my heart rate is being monitored. My movements are being monitored, because when I move my hand, and I think I demonstrated this, my hand is tagged, right? There you go, motion activated. That's tracking my movements right there. And that's exactly what the drone is doing. This is how the drone is going to pick up your signals, with a microwave beam, right? And it's off, it went off. This is exactly how it's going to be done. In order to pick up your heartbeat, the signals have to pick up the movement of your muscles, of your heart muscles, or of your chest muscles. How is that done? Well, obviously, a beam has to penetrate your body. Right? They'd have to point something at you. What is it they're pointing at you to pick up the motion of your heart or the muscle? Microwaves. Just demonstrated it. Did they ask the people their permission to do that? No. Did the cops, the Toronto police cops in 42nd Division, ask my permission to experiment on me? Because the people in that city was not asked. They're being experimented on with microwaves. And even if it's not microwave, say it's an infrared scan, that's still an invasion of privacy. But an infrared scan will not be able to pick up your heart rate. I could be wrong. Whatever technology they're using, it's an invasion of privacy. And it will come to the point where microwave technology will be used. If it's not being used in that particular trial, there is going to be a point where it will be used openly, without your permission, under the guise of, in this case, COVID-19 emergency. There's going to be other emergencies that's going to come up, right? It's only, COVID-19 is only the start of it. Because once the technology is introduced, it's going to be used for all kinds of other purposes. So, which brings me to another point. I also posted this link, and it's going to take me a while to get the link to read it to you, but I posted it, and I posted quite a few quotes from it. It's about a doctor who talked about some of the observations he made of the patients that are supposed to have COVID-19. And he quoted it as, to quote him, excuse me, he said it was very, very atypical of pneumonia that is supposed to be the end result of the COVID-19 infection, which kills. And one of the things that really, that took him completely by surprise was the clotting of the blood, the thickening of the blood, and the resulting clotting as a result of thickening. So I just demonstrated, and I've been doing this for years now, that I am being hit with microwave technology. And sometimes the power is very, very, very high. And I demonstrated that too with data, solid data. And there's a flag, and I'm being monitored. So we know everybody knows that I am being monitored. Well, how are you going to be remotely monitored? It has to be microwave, right? I was, and this follows you everywhere because you're an experimentee. So you're experimented with on anywhere you go. In one particular workplace, after only 2 weeks, I started feeling really, really sick. And I could feel my body being heavy. And I think I made a video of it even. And I remember saying in the video that I don't feel very well and I'm going to go to the doctor, to the emergency, and I did. And I was getting asthmatic. I was having problems breathing, and that's all documented in the hospital documents. This is what I told the doctor. And they took a D-dimer test, and it came up to 8,000. I think it was 8,040 or 400. Normal D-dimer test is under 500. So she thought that I had a clot in my lungs because I was talking about, I was having difficulty breathing. Knowing that I was hit with microwaves, I tried, she said she was going to do a CT scan of my lungs and my heart to find out whether there's a clot in my lungs, especially. And I hesitated doing the test because I knew I was being experimented on. And I asked about the level of radiation, and she said it was quite high because they'd have to put you in this tube, and your whole body, the radiation goes right through you, and it's quite a lot of radiation. So I had second thoughts about doing it because I knew I was being experimented with, and I knew I was being hit with the microwaves. But she insisted, and I'm glad she did, because pretty much she said it's either the radiation or you're going to die with a clot. That's what it came down to. And so I did the CT scan, and it didn't show any clots. So then I said to her, well, why is it that the D-dimer is so high? And she said, well, there could be other reasons. So when I came home and I did some research on the Magda Havas website, MAGDA HAVAS, she talked about experiments that she personally ran and other experiments that she referenced that showed that the blood clot almost within minutes of being exposed to lower power of radiation, a lower frequency, I should say, than the one that I'm measuring from this detector. In minutes, the red blood cells was clumped together. So when that means that it decreased the red blood cells' ability to carry oxygen to the cells. And of course, flowing through the lungs, it's not going to be able to do that, and it will clot. It will clot. It also triggers the inflammatory response in the body. And interestingly enough, COVID-19 is a result of a huge inflammatory response that fills up the lungs with fluid as a result. And imagine there are a few steps in between there, but cutting to the chase, that's the end result of it, which gives you pneumonia and when it gets infected and you die. Or it can cause clots and gives you heart attack and strokes, dying of strokes. So in a lot of cases, the COVID-19 patients are dying of strokes, heart attacks. I'm just making this reference to myself. I was being hit very, very hard in the workplace because what I demonstrated here and the data that I uploaded and I shared with the world is nothing compared to what I experienced in that workplace for 2 weeks. And when I went in for the job interview, I was perfectly fine. I was fine. And in 2 weeks, the D-dimer test came up to 8,000 and I was exposed to all this radiation that took me 2 years to recover from. Because right after that, I felt so weak. And my immune system, my white blood cells, I think there was a decrease in my white blood cells. Did I get that right? There was something wrong with my blood count when I did some blood work about a year after. So the radiation that's involved in getting a CT scan is very serious radiation. For people out there who are not aware of that, when your doctor recommends a CT scan, get a second and third opinion or do your own research and ask the questions and weigh your options. If there is absolutely no other option, then and you absolutely have to do it, then you do it. But if you do have options, then weigh them carefully before you do it. In my case, she pretty much came out and said to me that you can die of a clot, like overnight, or you can die, in a few years with radiation, if that's what you're concerned about. When she put it that way, I made a decision right away. So, yeah, so I'm sharing this because there are people out there who are suffering. There are people out there who are suffering, and there's a lot of targets out there as well, as just like myself, who are subjected to this kind of radiation. And if they're exposed to the coronavirus, then it becomes worse, which is why I take care of myself. I do the vitamin D, I do vitamin C. I am on aspirin right now because I'm in pain, because I'm being hit so badly. So I guess that's in a form that's blood thinner. Turmeric, curcumin with black pepper, that's also a blood thinner. Ginger, which is anti-inflammatory, so is curcumin, anti-inflammatory. Ginger, anti-inflammatory. Also a blood thinner. I'm not on any blood thinners from the doctor because according to the doctor, there's nothing wrong with me. Maybe he's right, I don't know. Maybe it's just the symptoms of being experimented with. Although I think it's a combination of both. I think as a result of being experimented with, there are things that happen that maybe is not being disclosed to me because I'm being experimented with. I'm a target. It's not supposed to be disclosed to me. And I do believe that there are certain things that's not disclosed to me. And I'm only alive for people out there who are believing everything about COVID-19 and I'm not, again, I'm going to reiterate, I am not anti-government. I am pro asking the right questions of your government. And if you think the government is not providing you with the answers, then ask again. Because that's what they're there for. They're supposed to be working for you. You voted them in. Just like doctors have a duty of care, the politicians have a duty of disclosure, accountability. This is a democracy. We are not yet in a technocracy. We're getting there. I guess I'll be seeing it in my lifetime if I live, maybe 10 years more. But for people who are coming into the technocracy, I feel sorry for them. I really do. I feel sorry for the people when I leave this earth, when my time is up and I leave people behind. It is going to be with so much pity. It's not going to be with the mindset that the world is a happier place, it's a better place, and I made a contribution to it, and it's getting better, and it's gotten better. I think my contribution is going to just make people aware of what's going on, and maybe a few of the people who are taking what I'm saying and doing their own research. Don't take my word for it, please, because I'm only talking about what I am experiencing. Don't take my word for it, because your situation is unique. Every person's situation is unique. Your body is unique, your metabolism is unique, your genetics are unique, your financial situation is unique, your educational system situation is unique. So that makes you a very, very, very unique human being. So do your own research and come up with your own answers. Research 5G. Research a technology that's going to be used by the state to surveil you, the chip that's going to be put into you, and what are the effects of the chips, how it's going to affect your body, not only causing infection, inflammation, and all that, and cancer, but neurological effects of the body. If the chip is hit with a frequency weapon, like from a drone, is it going to activate certain nerves in your body and cause pain and will it go up to your brain and cause problems sleeping and long-term effects? Is it as short-term as they make it out to be? Keep in mind, there are people in the government, and there's a lot of people in the government who are there to do good things. But there is a lot of people in the government who are infiltrators, who are there for power, just power. And because of the power, the need for power, there's all kinds of other influences, right? Satanic groups are going to come in. Terrorist groups are going to come in. Traffickers are going to come in and use those people who have this great need for power to their advantage. And that's true for anybody who's in power in any organization who have power over other human beings. It's just the nature of who we are. Just as it is in our nature to guard our human rights. We are born with rights. The government doesn't give it to us. We are born with it. We're supposed to have sovereignty of our body, of our thoughts, of our privacy, of our spirit, of our emotions. These things are sacred. They're not supposed to be interfered with without your permission. If you give permission, that's fine. Keep in mind, if somebody does something to you, like a drone scanning you and taking your temperature, if you stay quiet about it, that's giving consent. That's consent. If you don't talk, if you don't tweet about it, and you don't send an email to the member of parliament in your area, if you don't complain about it to somebody to get it to be talked about in parliament, then you're consenting, and good for you. That's your choice. Think what it's going to do to you and your kids. If you also think that chips are good things, and it's okay for your kid to have a brain chip in his or her brain, and you don't need the universities anymore, and it's all remote, you don't need the human interaction with the teacher, then that's fine. Stay quiet and let it happen. Keep in mind that when somebody can access a chip in your body, be it in your brain, be it in your limb, be it in your whichever part that they choose to put it in, they have control over you. You're giving away your power, and your kids' power, and your grandkids' power. Now, if I draw from my spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual side, in some ancient stories that my parents used to talk about, this is only a phase. Civilizations go in stages, and this is one of the stages that it has to go through, and it will self-destruct, and another cycle is going to start, simply because the human spirit and the life force that's driving the earth and the universe, and the same force that's driving human beings. It's what makes us talk, laugh. It is the reason why we're here. Even atheists have to admit that there is an organizing force. So say you don't believe in God. I don't believe in God in the way that there is some entity somewhere in a heaven somewhere, that is judging us all the time. I don't believe that. However, I do believe that there is an organizing force. How can you not believe that there is an organizing force and there is a force? The sun comes out every day, hopefully. The earth is spinning. The tree is growing every spring. There's flowers on the tree. There are birds on the trees. We breathe. We can see. We have a brain. We reproduce. We have kids. There are animals. And things go in cycles and seasons. All this is organization, right? Somebody has to be organizing this, and it goes in cycles, in stages. So there is an organizing force. Let's not call it God. Just let's talk about this force. So there are principles behind the force. There's principles by which the force operates. Like every 24 hours, there is a night and a day cycle. there are stars in the sky. We are born and we die. That's a cycle, right? So the whole civilization goes through cycles in much the same way. And so there are operating laws behind the cycles that will play itself out. And at some point, it always comes back to equilibrium. So this is a stage, you know, it's going to play out. But human beings and the life force that's driving us is always going to exist. You think about that. And if you want the human race to survive, then it will not survive with chips inside of us. It's going to survive in some other form. Transhumanism. A transhuman being is not a human being, it's a transhuman being. It'll be part machine. And that too is going to go through its phase and self-destruct. So if you think that the human body is sacred, well, valuable, not even sacred, and you want to preserve the human body as it is without chips, then speak up. If not, then go along with the agenda and see where it leads. And a lot of people will. Because I think that the same technology, this microwave technology, that is being used to track, is also being used to alter our brainwave patterns and being scanned. On my note. And it feels like something is running on the lips. It's like a phantom touch effect. Wow, it's going an hour. So I'm just gonna close it off there. I got sidetracked there. So let me just stop talking. And sorry, I didn't complete that thought. But so the head is being pulsed because I have a headache. Yeah, the temple is a really good place to pulse. It gives you a headache right away. It also, you have different effects on the brain depending on which spot you're hitting. So the temple and the ear, but the temple mainly, the pineal gland is right behind the eyes. If you go through if you draw a line from the temple into the middle of your head, the pineal gland is right there. So it affects the pineal gland. Notice my gray hairs? Well, I was going gray when I was 21. So the microwaves, they kill off your the cells that creates the color in your hair. So you go gray really quickly. And my head is constantly pulsed, especially when I'm sleeping. To my point. And the neck. So keep in mind, this is to the depth. And the people who are doing this, they're not going to stop unless you speak up. Think about it. There is 8, well, let's say 6. I'm sure there's more, maybe 6.5. There are 6 billion people in the world, and maybe 60% of us have phones. If everybody who has a phone send a tweet saying they don't want to be tracked, they don't want chips, think of the effect that will have. So I'll give you an example of being pulsed and what it happens. This is a copper necklace. It has magnets on it. And I've been wearing it for quite a while now. And in the last few days, my neck was hit really badly. I posted a burn mark in the back of my leg. That's because as I'm sitting here right now, the leg is constantly pulsed underneath. So the thighs underneath are burnt and are very, very painful. So I was hit on the neck very, very hard. And if you notice, I actually have some oil on there because it, some castor oil, which has a high vitamin E content. So it's very healing. So if you could see there, you could see the rash also on the side. And that's because it's heating up the copper. And it's starting to itch. And it gets, it shows up like a rash. Of course, if you itch it, it becomes a rash. It gets a little red and angry looking. Castor oil for people out there. If you do have a rash, it's really, really good. It's very high in vitamin E, and it absorbs, the skin absorbs it very, very quickly and very easily. It's a carrier oil, so it's used to make other oils penetrate the skin, and it does help. But yeah, that's a rash because the power is turned up on my neck, and it's causing itching. The other parts of the body itches as well, and olive oil is great. So olive oil with a good lathering of olive oil works. And that, and now I'm going to close off in an hour. It's 57, going on 56, 58 minutes. There was another article that I read today about swollen toes that COVID-19 patients are showing up with. When I sleep, my toes are constantly stung, and sometimes the power is turned up on my foot, on the sole of the foot, and the ball of the foot. You know, the instep. And it gets swollen, and it gets really painful to prevent me from walking. And if I don't look after it, like I said, I put like castor oil and I also shield. So there's nothing wrong with my foot. But before I did that, when I would get up in pain, the toes would be hurting. And when I put my shoes on, the friction of the shoes, because my foot would be hit as I'm walking, which would increase the temperature of the foot. So between being hit as I'm sleeping and the friction with the shoes on and the heat caused by the foot being hit will cause blisters like this on the foot, on the toes, and around the nails. It will be swollen and red. It happened to my big toe until I figured out that it was being radiated as I slept. Isn't that interesting? There's absolutely nothing wrong with my toe, by the way. I would sleep with, I have copper that I shield with, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with my toe. There is no blisters. However, the big toe, the joint in the big toe is constantly hit because that's a very important point in your foot, because when your foot flex, it always bends, right? So, and the instep as well, and the top of the foot is also hit when I'm walking in the unit. So it hurts. But I found that when I use copper, and a very cheap way of getting copper was I bought pot scrubbers and I open it up. When you roll it out, it becomes like a sock. It's actually one tube rolled up, one continuous tube that's rolled up. And you can just use it as a sock. Put it on your foot. It shields from your modem as well. I unplug my modem most nights as I go to sleep when I remember. So that helps. I put this on my modem, and the RF reading was close to 1,000. Interestingly enough, when I did that the last time, it wasn't that high. So something changed. I'm not quite sure what, but something changed. Maybe 5G, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. I have to call my provider and ask whether 5G is being used. I do believe it is, because my modem is a 5G, could switch to 5G. So the RF reading is quite high. Maybe that's the reason, maybe not, I don't know. I'm just saying that's my observation. So I'm gonna stop talking. So no, there is no depression. Sometimes when I'm hit really, really hard, like last night I was hit and I shielded quite well last night. But in the morning, my ear was pulsed very, very, very powerful pulse, and it was very painful. So I used ice because the pulsing causes heat. I've demonstrated that a million times. And the heat causes a headache, of course, and it could cause a concussion if it's hit. You can lose your hearing, basically. It could pierce your eardrums. And when your head is hit, it could cause a concussion. So I ice my head. And I use magnets on the head. For some reason, magnets just takes the pain away very, very quickly, in a matter of minutes. Magnets do help. Neodymium magnets, the sufferers out there, 5G. That helps. And I took some aspirin. So this is, and I'm inside and I can't get out. When I get out, I'm red alerted. So I'm hit on my chest quite a bit when I'm red alerted. Almost got a heart attack quite a few times, actually. Again, ice on your chest. It reduces your temperature, and it triggers your autonomic system, your autoimmune. I think they're the same thing. Autonomic system, and it triggers your okay, I'm not going to go into details because it's already an hour. It brings your heart rate down, bottom line. So it prevents your blood pressure increasing to the point where you can get arrhythmia. And I shielded. And also there is a maneuver you can do. I forgot the name now, but it's bearing down, as if you're going to the bathroom and you're bearing down and you're coughing. The same idea. If you had a deep cough, it can also prevent a heart attack. Do your own research. God knows. Hopefully, you're not going to need it, but all these changes that's coming, that's going to use microwave technology. And COVID-19 patients are dying of heart attacks. These are some things that can come in handy. Hopefully you will not need it. Do your own research. Just do your own research, because 31-year-old people, 16-year-old people are dying. So based on my experience, I think that radiation of some form has something to do with it. Talk to you another time, and take care.